talk about Young Africa Stability. Now, Young Africa Stability is not really an instrument, it's more of a program that is going to be rolled out under the auspices of the Young Africa Foundation in partnership with the Academy for Young Africa. Where does this whole idea of Young Africa Stability come from? Again, it's really about thinking, how can we create businesses and enterprises and economic opportunities for 200 million young people in Africa? And one of the very basic needs, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is the need for safety and security. And this is a big issue in Africa, in many, many parts of Africa, is that there is a lack of stability. There's a lack of safety. A lot of this has to do with political reasons. A lot of, much of it has to do with conflict around certain areas where there are specific resources. And again, in thinking about this and praying about this, I had to come to the conclusion that we can't create a stable Africa. We can't create a stable country. We have to create stable communities. We have to create safe homes and stable communities. Now, this is really, again, so interesting, because ultimately it all comes down to the very basic principles that the Bible teaches. And the first one is around love God, and the second one is love your neighbor as you love yourself. And these two are really the secrets to stability. Why? Because if you love God, it means that you acknowledge that He exists. It means that you know that there is a higher power that's going to hold you accountable at the end of your life. And as a result, you're going to think twice about the actions and decisions that you take. It's an extremely helpful way of looking at life, an extremely helpful worldview to have, and of course an extremely helpful belief system to have, that there is a greater power, God, and that this God is a God of love, who wants the best for you. He doesn't want you to suffer and to struggle. He wants you to make good choices for your life. And this is what the Bible teaches. And the second thing is around loving your neighbor. And so it's really about saying, don't do something to someone that you don't want to be done to yourself, the golden rule. It's a very simple rule that has been building or laid the foundation of stable and successful civilizations for thousands of years. So the question is really, how do we help? What can one do to help youth in Africa to work in their communities in order to help to create the necessary stability and safety, so that the businesses that are going to be brought into these communities through the youth, through the adults that want to create opportunities for youth, through the Young Africa Investments program or system, are going to be safe. Because if you don't have safety, you can't have economy. You need stability. This is something that the people in the Roman Empire understood very well. So they enforced safety and stability. If you look at movies representing this time, it's very much around safety and stability. And of course, at the time, very cruel methods were used to enforce stability. Even now, when there are situations where there is rioting, cruel methods are used to enforce stability. I believe we need to move beyond that point. There are other ways of building stability from the bottom up. And here it is very interesting for me to have had the opportunity to spend quite a bit of time in Switzerland. I mean, really, it's actually very little time, but over the years, always, on the odd chance, had an opportunity to spend a bit of time there, a couple of days here and there, and to learn more and to read more about the way that the Swiss have organized themselves. And I found it quite fascinating, because it's a democracy like no other really in the world, and it works. It works extremely well, communal level, and also when there are issues at stake on a national level. There's a system of polling, a system of asking people to vote on an issues-based system, not linking the issues to the political parties to such a strong extent as what happens in other countries. Now, on a personal level, I believe that the party-based political democracy system has had its run and it's coming to an end. It will be very interesting to see how this plays out in the next couple of decades. But I do believe that we need to move towards more of an issues-based and servant leadership-based leadership system. Our democratic voting systems based on party politics are not necessarily bringing the best leaders to the front. I think many of you may agree with me on that. I really believe there's another way of growing leaders from the bottom up. And so combining a system of polling, meaning issues-based voting on a local community level, and growing leadership systems that start at the household level, extend to a street level, expand to a village level, and grow into a community level, and then hook up with the municipal demarcations and the systems that exist. I really believe that that is a very, very important way forward in terms of building ownership of development of towns and villages and cities all across Africa. When I lived in Johannesburg for about a year in an area called Melville, and I really enjoyed living in Melville. It was a very arty part of town, part of the city. But one thing that really struck me about spending time in Johannesburg is that Johannesburg, and I've noted this in other cities across the world as well, large cities, actually is a conglomeration of smaller villages. I always joke that, and this is a joke that only people who understand Dutch or Afrikaans will understand, but I would say, well, I live in Mayville and you live in Yeoville. Yeoville being another part of the city. But it's really about saying that each one of us lives in our own little village, because Mayville is really a village. It's my ville. And Yeoville is, could be your village. So the whole of Johannesburg is actually put together by a whole bunch of very interesting, very characterful villages. And I think this is where the foundation of stability starts, is people living in an area and agreeing to make their area safe, beautiful, fun, exciting, interesting, doing things to attract people from other villages to come over and experience their restaurants and experience the culture that they have developed in their village, explore their beautiful parks and gardens, explore their museums, attend their theatre, their local theatre. And in this way, if we look at cities and even mixed-use developments as modern villages, and we really have a pattern according to which we can build villages on a human scale, even in big cities. There's an author called Christopher Alexander, whom I learned about through my one friend who studied architecture, and later on had a lot of opportunity to learn more about him and actually read his books. When my husband, who was also an architect, had the whole collection from Christopher Alexander. Christopher Alexander is a really important author to read, and if you are at all interested in developing village life and developing spaces in which people feel safe and comfortable, reading Christopher Alexander's books are just a must, an absolute must. They are just beautifully written. They are just lovely to read. And he applied his mind to understanding spaces and understanding how people create spaces where they feel at home and where they think, wow, this is a nice place. And that is what we want to do with villages all across Africa. The traditional African village is a nice place. It's a Christopher Alexander style of village. If you look at homesteads, I mean, in Africa you very much find the principle of homesteads, rural homesteads, and less large villages. But if you look at the homestead or the royal homestead of the Zulu king, and you look at the old plans that show exactly how things were organized, it's a very interesting communal setting. A lot of things have changed since over the last 200 years. And a lot of new technologies have been introduced to our communities. But I was driving to get my driver's license to a city in our province, Gauteng, last week. It took me an hour and a half to drive there. The city is called Vanderbijlpark. It really is one of the typical cities in South Africa that have grown very rapidly as a result of mining, a mining industry, and these cities are really extremely problematic structurally. And one of the challenges that we have in South Africa, and I believe in many cities across Africa, is rapid urban migration of people from rural areas coming to the cities and coming to towns in search of a better life, because they struggle to make a living in their own rural areas and small villages. And so our government's response has been to develop something that's called an RGP house, which is a Reconstruction and Development Program house. And this is ironically something that was copied from the apartheid thinking, and also specifically from the mining bosses at the time, who would build little, we called them matchbox houses, small houses, so that each one could have a piece of land and a house in order to try and help provide accommodation for these masses of people streaming into the city and to keep some kind of order and control. Of course, the government never has enough resources to plan ahead. And so we still have many informal settlements, which we call squatter camps, that just spring up all the time, mushroom up all the time. And to try and create order in those spaces is practically impossible. I don't believe anything is impossible. I believe there is something called the will. We humans have will, and we also have collective will. And we need to start building systems that can tap into the collective will of people. And this is really where the thinking around the whole Young Africa Stability Program came from. And combining this with a new technology that we have, where every household probably now in Africa has at least one mobile phone, which means that on a household level we would be able to conduct polls, we would be able to conduct research to understand what people think or feel, or how they feel, or what they believe a useful solution would be to a particular issue affecting their community. And so using that as a digital instrument to get information from people. And the software company that I have established really has access to that kind of software and can make it available. And the intention is to start using it in an experimental manner through the students that are participating in the Leadership and Entrepreneurship Program all across Africa, and to start gathering information in terms of how people feel about things, and to start polling people, meaning asking them questions about what they would prefer in terms of certain decisions, and what they would like their villages to look like, and what the basic needs are, and things like that. What would they prioritize when it comes to, investing in any infrastructure, or prioritizing any infrastructure program? What are the real needs of people? And I really believe that we live in such a fantastic time, that we actually can do this nowadays. We can do it, and it's really great. So I'm really hoping that we can start rolling out the Young Africa Stability Program through the Young Africa Academy for Young Africa. But all the data that's collected is going to be kept under the auspices of the Young Africa Foundation, in order to ensure that it is dealt with absolute integrity. And yes, absolutely, the Young Africa Foundation will be making available this data on a subscription basis to a business that wants to do market research or to governments who want to do planning. However, the data that will be available is not personalized data, it's aggregate data, because only individuals can give permission to their personal data and choose to interact with an entity, whether it's government or a business, if they prefer. So these are things that we are going to be very precise about in terms of data privacy. The thinking is really that we're going to roll out a system which I'm just calling the NeighbourNet. A NeighbourNet is something that's going to help, that's going to involve encouraging neighbours to get to know each other. That's as simple as that. And basically encouraging neighbours to start making decisions about what's going on in their own streets, just simply in their own immediate, or if they don't live in a street because they're living dispersed, in their own space. And so that they can start making decisions around how to improve the safety in their own space. Now, in the previous episode, I spoke about the community care cadets, and that is the first point of creating a level of monitoring so that intruders cannot come in without being noted and noticed. And the nice thing is that nowadays we have cell phones with cameras and video, which means if a crook is coming to a house, the youth doesn't have to approach the crook. All they have to do is film him. They don't have to say anything. They don't have to be, all they have to do is film the intruder and send an alert message to the person who's running the drone, and the drone can start hovering over the crook. Now, I think that's quite a nice deterrent. And then there can be teams of community care officers that can be mobilized in order to address the situation. But the person has been identified, and that is the most important thing. And in that way, we can keep intruders out of communities, and of course report the matter to the police, and the police can take the matter from there. So it's really about making young people feel that they need to take control of their neighborhood so that they can create a safe environment, a friendly and safe environment. And also, if somebody is there who is lost, to give that person advice and assistance and make that person feel safe, and invite them to come and eat at a local restaurant, and invite them. Many people don't, especially when you're in Africa, you have no idea where you're going to find anything to drink, where you're going to find a public toilet. And these community care cadets can provide that kind of information. And every tourist will be very happy, or every visitor is very happy to pay a little bit of money as towards a public toilet. So, of course, the public toilet system is another franchise system on the list of 200 franchise opportunities in the whole Young Africa franchise system. But I'm digressing. Back to stability and security. So the whole idea of keeping neighborhoods safe also came actually very much from an architect friend of my husband's, whom I also became a friend with. And he was always emphasizing the aspect of defensible neighborhoods. And from his point of view, it was a very important aspect of design, is that you need to create spaces so that neighbors can watch each other's houses. So that when they look out of the windows or out of the front door, or they sit on the porch, they can see the neighbor's place, so that it's possible for them to be able to identify if there is somebody who is going to the house that is not normally there, and to be able to make sure that that person sees that they're watching them, so that they are deterred from doing anything that they shouldn't be doing. And so at the same time, if we all know our neighbors, it becomes very difficult for anyone to conduct criminal activity in our neighborhoods. Because if you're the friendly neighbor welcoming someone new knocking on the door in the block of flats, for instance, and bringing a loaf of bread and a bit of salt. I mean, this is a Germanic tradition, is that when you visit someone who has moved into a house, who's a new neighbor, you bring some bread and you bring some salt, because you express a wish that neither of them must ever run out in their life as they have moved into the new place. It's a beautiful gesture. I'm sure in African culture there are similar traditions that one could revive in terms of welcoming someone into the tribe, into the community, and just making them feel at home. So now, if you are a criminal who's trying to hide, you won't feel very, you don't want to cause trouble. So you'll be very happy to receive whatever is there, because now you are going to get to know the neighbor, because if you are going to be funny, that neighbor is going to watch you. And they're going to start telling the police that there's something funny going on, because these people are not very nice. We want nice people in our neighborhoods. We don't want people who want to hide things in our neighborhood. Let them report themselves to the police if they're doing something that's not right. And let them move into a community that is rehabilitating criminals and giving them a fresh start. But let them not live in our communities. Let us help them transform their lives by flooding them with love. Flooding them with love and support. Let them have an opportunity to just change their behavior, so that if they were planning to do something criminal, like selling drugs or running a human trafficking ring or starting a little brothel in your community, that they must be overshadowed by the love of everybody in that area, so that they cannot start doing that kind of work in your community. I believe that is the secret. That is the secret. We have to love our neighbors. We have to love our criminal neighbors, so that they have no space to be criminal. And we must love them so that they actually can find a way and inspiration to change. So these are the two key aspects of Young Africa Stability as a program. The first one is around asking people what it is that their needs are, and facilitating an opportunity for them to work together to achieve a common goal in terms of their own street, in terms of their own community. And these are the skills that the youth, the students that are going to be registered for the Leadership and Entrepreneurship program, are going to learn in the second year, in level 2 of the program, when they are going to focus on community leadership development. In the first semester, or the first 6 months, every student is going to focus on personal leadership development, because each one of us needs to learn to manage ourselves personally, and to learn to understand our personal finances first, before we can think about running a business. In the second 6 months, in the second semester of the level 1 of the Leadership and Entrepreneurship program, youth are going to learn about business leadership skills. They are going to learn about running a business, and about how to work together and collaborate in order to understand what it takes to build a business. And then in the second year which is level 2 of the Leadership and Entrepreneurship program, there is going to be a focus on community leadership development in the first semester, in the first 6 months. In the second 6 months, there will be a focus on global leadership development, helping youth to understand the issues that affect each one of us, no matter where we are living, because these are global issues, and we need to understand how our behavior is contributing to what's going on a global level, and how things that are happening internationally are affecting our lives, so that we can make wise choices around these things. And so what is very exciting, and I just want to mention it here, is that I've been approached by a training service provider in South Africa who has the ability to ensure that the leadership program that I developed is accredited by the South African qualifications authorities. And this is opening a lot of doors in terms of funding, bursary funding for students in South Africa. I'm really hopeful that similar programs may be possible through the Young Africa Foundation and other countries across Africa, and working in collaboration with companies in those countries, so that for those youth who really don't, really are struggling financially, that there may be a means for them to receive a bursary to be able to join the Leadership and Entrepreneurship Program. What is exciting about this is that this company has also encouraged me to develop 2 more years in terms of specialized training in leadership or in entrepreneurship, so that ultimately there will be a 4-year degree program that can be accredited internationally as a university degree. So the students that start with absolutely nothing in the first year from completing a leadership and entrepreneurship program and personal development course, actually after pursuing and continuing with studies over the next couple of years, can actually end up with a university degree. I'm just mentioning this because this is a new thought that came up in the last couple of months, and it's really exciting. But it's just a way of broadening the scope of the work that the Academy for a Young Africa is doing. So I hope you like this program about stability, and I hope that you understand my thinking around creating stable communities and starting with our own street. Because if we have stable and safe streets, if we have stable and safe farms, if we have stable and safe villages, then we can have stable and safe provinces, and we can have stable and safe countries, and we can have a stable and safe continent. In closing, I just want to say that I'm very aware that there are conflict hotspots all across Africa. These conflict hotspots are generally concentrated around spaces where there is a mineral resource. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about policy for Africa. And this is really around an instrument that's going to help create policy environments which can really de-escalate the conflict in these areas. That is the work that I'm hoping to be able to focus on in 5 years' time. I'm really excited about it. I decided to focus the next 5 years really very much on the skills development side and on the entrepreneurship development and enterprise development side. But then in the next 5 years of my life to really focus more on the policy side, because I see such fantastic opportunity there. And of course already there's a lot of activity there on what that one can do, and the students in the Leadership and Entrepreneurship Program are already going to become involved in terms of gathering information around policy in Africa. And that in itself is a franchise-based business. But anyway, thank you for watching this episode. I'm really excited to be talking about the last 2 instruments in this week. And at the end of this month, which is really end of this weekend, I will finally launch the Leadership and Entrepreneurship Program as the first training program of the Academy for a Young Africa. Wish me well.